I think that freedom is something that exists solely in your mind.
Being forced to give up ownership of our identities.
In a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
In the future, do you think everyone is going to be chipped?
I think it'll be voluntary, but I am certainly convinced that millions of people will find it very, very valuable to have a smart device under their skin.
So, picture your life in a place where everything you do, what you buy, how you behave, is tracked. The government gives you a score, and the score is a measure of how trustworthy you are as a citizen. It sounds like that show Black Mirror, but it's actually happening in China.
What happens if we break the rules? What happens if we try to change the way the system works?
And you think I'm just imagining this stuff? Crazy old Rowan with his conspiracy theories? Think again.
The spread of the coronavirus.
The spread of a deadly new virus.
How deadly is it? How fast can it spread? And how prepared are we?
As experts fear, it could become
a pandemic. It can lead to organ failure, pneumonia and death. There's no treatment, so prevention is a top priority.
On much of the planet, most meat animals get antibiotics every day of their lives, not to cure illnesses, but to fatten them up and to protect them against the factory farm conditions they are raised in.
To make matters worse, pharmaceutical companies are currently infecting animals with COVID-19 in the hope of finding a way to create a vaccination. And so because of our desire to kill and eat animals, more animals now have to suffer. How can it make sense?
By the next pandemic, I believe we can have what I call mega testing diagnostic platforms. They can be deployed quickly, cost very little, and test 20% of the entire population every week. To stop future pandemics quickly, we need to be able to spot disease outbreaks as soon as they happen anywhere in the world. And that requires a global alert system. If there turns out to be some new infectious pathogen, then we need a group of infectious disease responders to spring into action. Think of these as like pandemic firefighters. They're going to use their logistics, use their ability to build up capacity quickly. They're going to go wherever that problem is. Stopping the next pandemic will require a big investment. But I think of this as the best insurance policy the world could buy.
This is the plan that I have repeatedly warned about. To take the tools of oppression used to tackle the coronavirus and use them all, lockdowns, forced business closures, exclusion zones, isolation. We heard Angela Marsden earlier, businesses shut down, isolation at home, all of those measures, including destroying private property rights and private income in order to tackle the climate crisis. Within a few short years, yes, their words, you will own nothing. And you will be happy. Remember, this is not me saying this, this is them. They are even running ads for the Great Reset. A handful of countries will dominate. I wonder which ones they might be.
If you question everything all the time, this will go down on your permanent record. And then it will follow you to high school, and then it will follow you to college, and then it will follow you to workplace, and then it'll follow you through the rest of your interactions with power. And you know, as a kid, when you don't know anything about anything, that's actually terrifying. And over time, bit by bit, as you do more and more, the threat begins to lose its power because you realize that there actually isn't a permanent record. Nobody cares what you did in elementary school. Nobody cares what you did in middle school. Nobody cared about high school or college. Honestly, nobody really cares about what you do in your workplace, besides your employer and then your next employer. But at best, the records have never been permanent. They've never been perfect. Until now. And this is the problem of the world we live in. The younger you are in this room, relative to the person next to you, the more of your life is known and recorded by people you have no influence over. And these records, at least under the laws in the United States, which have been unfortunately exported around the world into a kind of status quo, says that you don't own records about your private life. These companies that created them, they're their records, not you, even if they're entirely and exclusively about you. Let's do this, and you ask why, and they say, because I said so. This is the way a lot of power relationships work today.
You will own nothing and you will be happy. Now, if you go back just several hundred years, the founding father and first president of the United States, which was essentially a project founded on the idea of human liberty and freedom, pretty much for the first time in modern history. George Washington said, there is no such thing as personal human rights without property ownership. And he said that for several very interesting and important reasons. When we talk about collective ownership, we are often told that the great thing about it is that everybody will own. The reality of the thing is that nobody but those in power own.
In the modern world, we are not permitted a sense of ownership without identity. To be able to make a trade in many cases, God, if you live in some place like Sweden where they're trying to get rid of cash, right? You've got to use a card. The card is connected to your bank account. That goes on. If you're trying to buy something like property, right? How are they even going to register that? They need you to show your ID. They need you to get it stamped. You go to the people at the desk. The people at the desk then bless you to be able to participate in this transaction. If you want to be able to buy a bottle of water at the gas station, this has been and should be a cash transaction. It should be traceless. But now, increasingly, there's cards involved. Now, increasingly, there's cameras involved. Now, increasingly, there's Bluetooth beacons in the store that look at your phone and they see, oh, it's got its Bluetooth active because it was just connected to its car, so we know it's this device. We've seen this device at this mall. They've got license plate readers. All of these things form a big constellation of richness, especially when compounded with the fact that your cell phone is constantly, 100% of the time that it's turned on, screaming out into the sky, here I am, register me to the nearest tower. And then they're tracking where this goes. And all of these things mean we're never anonymous. We're never just a person. We're always this specific entity. And if we are this specific entity, we can be nudged, we can be shifted, we can be shaped by all of these people because we have universally unique identifiers.
Now imagine a scenario in which you do something that the government does not approve of. You read a book that it doesn't want you to read. You write an essay or an article that it doesn't like. You create a YouTube video commenting on something in a negative way. Now, those are all things that productive human beings do to critique and build and grow their society. But you can't do it there. And if you do something that the government disapproves of, using these social credit scores, they can ghost you. They can effectively lock you out of your world.
That they are now promising you will own nothing and you will be happy. What they should have added is, and we, the very rich, will own everything and be even happier. Of course they will.
Remarkably easy for smooth politicians to stand up and say kindly sounding things. Now, the sorts of things that we're hearing from Davos and from the likes of the proponents of the Great Reset all talk about collectivist and communal living and how nobody will own anything. But now consider for just a second, that is already a fallacy. Someone, somewhere, has to own. And in fact, what happens is, if you take ownership out of the hands of a broad-based populace and of many separate entrepreneurs and families and individuals, and you concentrate it into the hands of, say, a few multinational corporations working together with government, well, firstly, that system is by definition fascistic. This idea of an all-powerful government and the businesses that work in conjunction with them. It leads very quickly to cronyism, to the types of corruption that we see, particularly in South Africa, where we are so keen on talking about business and government collaborating. And doesn't that just sound like such a good thing, business and government collaborating? What happens there is you have the people who own the rules, enforce right and wrong, and have a financial incentive to be corrupt, working with the people who have the money and have an incentive to corrupt them.
Like a tsunami in the fourth industrial revolution, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. That is an order.